Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling GOP Continues to Mobilize Fear, Distrust, and Psychotic Mental Illness for Political Benefit. So, um, this is a reflection on just the overall trend in GOP politics, which is apparently quite a powerful force given its craziness, okay, literally. And it has success, political success, in combined with a strategic view of the U.S. Constitution, really, and the U.S. system of government overall, and a long-term planning by well-funded or ultra-wealthy individuals to overturn both the New Deal of the 1930s and 40s, and also the Great Society, and also thereafter various reforms in what we call, cultural social policy, that which these individuals find distasteful, threatening, claim that they're anti-American, and their program is to turn the clock back, according to their view, to what they consider to be a better time, and also really a time where, literally, not so much a time, but a political constellation where white males, especially suburban, rural white males, but just in general white males, were the dominant political and cultural forces, and that they would like to install that again. And they're doing this in part for the benefit of the billionaire class and the vast inequalities that have developed in the last 40, 50 years in American society, that any reasonable left-wing party would attempt to change and then threaten the wealth of these ultra wealthy individuals and corporate structures that are benefiting from let's say, the neoliberal order, okay, and so, which has been under threat. And so, but on the ground, so this is sort of a marriage of convenience between the corporate and wealthy elites and the sort of grassroots activists who believe in a bygone era and are racist, white supremacists, and who are against the shifting demographic tides in U.S. society, and are trying to hold on to their political and cultural power. So, but anyway, on the ground, that political program doesn't really work in terms of regular retail politics. So, and it's not like it. This is sort of there was a conscious plan to necessarily to be crazy, but it requires, and this has happened in other places and times, including in Germany in the 1930s, and in Italy in the 1920s, that it requires a mythology and a creation of a false propaganda-based reality for a segment of the population, a base for this program of rollback. And that requires, in the United States at least, the mobilization of psychotic mental illness and and so we see in the Republican Party just a whole string of people who appear to be either feigning psychotic mental illness or actually mentally ill, and of a particular spectrum. And the spectrum, so mental illness is a broad category. There are lots of different kinds of mental illness. It could be estimated that at any given time, a third of the U.S. population has some form of mental illness. But there's a specific bands of mental illness that are particularly, and not just mental illness, but there's also traits and sort of pre-mental illness, you could say, traits that are susceptible. That so there's a commonality between sometimes the leadership or the nominal leadership, the stage, the overt entertainers, you could say, of this movement, and maybe not necessarily their planners, but the entertainers appear to have some forms of mental illness, and they're mostly in the paranoid and you could say psychopathic areas. In other words, the spectra. So, and those are apparently, I mean, these are things that they're parts of the populace that you could say maybe always were either psychopathic or paranoid, and there's also some people who have become more so under the influence of the propaganda onslaught of various media organizations, including most notably Fox News, created a wary, paranoid, easily manipulated self in these people who they make them certainly appear to have real paranoia, real paranoid mental illness, or real and more troublingly or equally troublingly psychopathic mental illness. So psychopathy is a quite rare, you could say, in the population overall if you're some kind of a natural background, and it's quite a, so it's basically someone who believes that the norms of society don't apply to them, that they can plan and they can manipulate other people for their benefit, and ignore right and wrong, and that they don't. It's a form of sociopathy. Sociopathy is just the general attitude of just disregarding, or the behavioral disregard for the rights of others in robbing, stealing, whatever. And psychopathy is the more planful, you could say, calculating version of that. And we have collected in the Republican Party and in its various side groups a bunch of people who have a psychopathic relationship to current American society. Whether they're actively psychopathic in other ways, it's hard to know. There's certainly some real psychopaths among them. It appears as though Donald Trump is a psychopath, so has no regard for the rights and the feelings of other people, and just sees them as objects to manipulate. And there are also others who are attracted to him, who are in his group, who have similar attitudes. He's not a particularly smart psychopath, but he's not an ultra stupid one either. Even though there are people who claim that he's very stupid, he's very good at manipulating other people, and so he has a certain kind of intrapersonal intelligence that is not a book intelligence. It's not, though he also having been exposed to many highly educated people, he knows some things, though fleetingly sometimes, that give him an advantage over people who probably are about the same level of intelligence overall, but just don't have his advantages as having come from a very wealthy background. So anyway, but we see, for instance, in debates now, you saw this. I'll share the videos. The debate for governor in the GOP debate for governor in Arizona, and also I think there was one in Texas. But anyway, there's a couple of different debates where you just see real craziness being batted about, but among supposed future leaders of the GOP, or some of them current leaders, and it doesn't seem to be disqualifying in the GOP to have this kind of an illness. Furthermore, or to display and to act as if one had such an illness, even if one doesn't. And so, this is something that it's, and I'm saying this, that there needs to be a language in the public sphere that is able to express not exactly specific diagnoses for specific people, but just in general, that is able to reflect on the craziness in a slightly more sophisticated way, and to talk about how removed from reality these people are, and how much they are, and furthermore, they're creating this world that's a shared psychosis. So, or it's a mass psychosis. Bandy Lee talks about shared psychosis. You could also call it a mass psychosis, and you could say that fascism is a form of mass psychosis, and co-created by media outlets and by propaganda. And so this mass psychosis, I'm calling this not just because I don't like fascism, and a person like me, a person of Jewish origin, so on and so on, has certain disadvantages in a fascist society, but and my family was persecuted by fascists in the middle of the 20th century, but that there's a real remove from reality, and these are individuals who make things up and believe them fixedly, without any regard for actual evidence from the world. So they're holding on to fixed ideas that have no basis in reality. They seem to be it's very hard, if not impossible, to persuade them that some of their ideas are wrong, and they are fixated. For instance, the person of Donald Trump is a sort of a touchstone, a fetish for these people, and they believe with him in his own very self-serving, very transparently self-serving, and really ridiculously egomaniacal ideas about patriotism, about fraud in this case of an election, and it's also an infantile psychosis. It's very much I want, and it's without really an adult sense of being able to understand that one's wishes are not necessarily fulfilled by reality. So anyway, it doesn't. I have a PhD in psychology, so maybe I talk about these things maybe with a little more ease than some other people, but it should be really a matter of public discussion in the terms that I maybe was just talking about, how removed from reality this people are, and how much in this bubble they live. And I mean, some people talk like this and so forth and so on, but in the highest media outlets like the New York Times and so forth and so on, it's considered to be, quote unquote, a political thing. In other words, it's a red thing, it's a conservative thing, it's a pro-Trump thing to be psychotic, to have psychotic ideas. And so it's respectabilized. So this goes back to a theme of Politics 2100 that there's been a multi-decade campaign to sanitize the GOP and the right wing by, among others, media outlets like the New York Times, that even though there are many critical things you could find in them, and sensitive readers of the, or not sensitive, I wouldn't say they're sensitive readers, but religious readers of those and believers in those, the probity of those publications seem to think that they're getting out of them what they, a negative vision of Donald Trump. But really, it's not nearly as negative as it could be. It's not nearly as stark as it could be, and stark in terms of realistically explaining how ill the psychotic in this case, and removed from reality and egocentric and childlike and immature this quote unquote red or conservative part of America is. So you have pieces that constantly talk about political polarization as if it's sort of equal between the left, quote unquote left, not really left, but democratic centrism and far right GOP. When the far right GOP, you need to characterize it not just as on some kind of spectrum as being just also equally located in left and right, but furthermore, it's way out there in part because there are psychotic. It's not in touch with reality. It's in touch with its feelings, and they're able to. And this is where it differs from this kind of mental illness. Differs from the kind of mental illness that you encounter in a psychiatric ward. That these are people who, though some of these people might benefit from certainly outpatient psychiatric treatment, no doubt, but if they would need to want to change, as you know, the famous saying goes, but and it would need to be a problem for them, but the craziness is made quote unquote egocentric or culturally correct or politically correct for the right wing by, among other things, these helpful quote unquote centrist or neutral outlets that say, well, that's just conservative, that's just red, so to speak, that's just red state thinking, and but no, it's psychotic thinking, and you need to be comparing them, what their beliefs are, to what is reality. And I'm not saying that their opponents are always firmly upon the sitting on the basis of reality. They also should be questioned. And I've just published a video about how out of touch with reality certain parts of the Democratic leadership is. But it's a different kind of psychoticism or a different kind of out of touchness. And it's really the role of, among other things, media or commentators. I mean, I'm springing in here trying to, in my own way, create momentum toward people recognizing reality, psychological reality of people themselves and other people, but also the real reality out there in the world, which we have to act upon and which we have to deal with to survive and thrive as a species and as a nation and as a people and so forth and so on. But but without recognizing that this is not just a political flavor, and this is where it hides in plain sight, this craziness, or it's only noticed by some people, or it becomes a sort of a form of samizdat, like on certain channels, either liberal channels or left channels, that one says is able to say, look how crazy this is, look how nutty, look how cruel. Also, not just crazy, but it's cruel crazy. It's not just sort of crazy out there that someone who's on the street corner who is dealing with delusions and hallucinations. These are people who are imposing and creating a compulsory regime through laws based on their psychotic ideas, based on their or certainly unrealistically nostalgic ideas, or unrealistically immature ideas about sexuality and about female biology and about a whole bunch of other things. So it gets into, it's not just, it's a conservative thing to not understand female biology. It just is not understanding female biology, and also the medical apparatus that is developed to help women survive and thrive in our society. And so I'm talking about abortion rights right there, but also contraception, other issues. So there is you could say it's not just certainly it's an unrealistic idea about reality that needs to be constantly, it's not simply a matter of preference of ice cream flavors, that you say, well, you have a red flavor and you have a blue flavor, and they're just going for the red flavor version of female biology. No, it's a radically impoverished, stupid idea about female biology and about it's cruel, and it leads to cruelty. It leads to death, okay, of mostly women, and so it's there's so I think this video is part of an effort to counter you don't have to use my language or use this particular type of language to counter the snow job, the propaganda job, unconscious propaganda job that's being done by the media, by the GOP itself, by right-wing media, right, or propagandist media, but also the Democratic Party elite and the centrist media. I think I just mentioned media before. But anyway, that creates this sort of respectable glaze where you don't see the psychoticism or the psychotic detachment from reality, based or immature, but lack of understanding of basics of reality, and also the cruelty of it, the psychopathy, the effort to subjugate others, to exploit others, to subjugate them, to in some cases to try to eliminate them into if it comes to eliminationism, okay, genocide. So anyway, this is and also this is also those forms of mental illness, they naturalize violence, okay? So this is probably violence in paranoia. The paranoid feels justified in lashing out, okay? And they think they are a poor, weak person who's being set upon by forces that are bigger than them. They're trying to lash out at those forces, or lashing out against those forces is entirely justified. Therefore, they should arm themselves to the teeth, or they should get together with other people who feel similarly to try to defeat this this sort of gorgon that they think is out to get them. And then and also that it's psychopathy in and of itself almost always is associated with violence of various kinds. Your plan involves other people. So a psychopath as a plan to either kill or exploit and rob and subjugate and humiliate other people for the sake of the self. The mission is of the self. And so, and it naturalizes that. It makes it part of its its own the structure of normality for psychopaths. So anyway, so violence becomes then normalized within that group of paranoid and psychopathic people. And so anyway, I think that this is a good way to diminish the supposed entitlement to power, entitlement, and the supposed high status of, or assumed high status of these, the base of the GOP. They think they're a better sort of person, and they're the real Americans, so forth and so on. They manipulate symbols to make themselves feel like they're the real Americans. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party leadership has assented too much to this formula or this valuation of the symbols of quote unquote Americanness or real Americanness. But anyway, this effort to look at them through the lens of psychology and is an effort to bring them down to everyone, the level of everybody else, and to say, look, this is, you're trying to hurt other people and use violence to do so. You are subject to fears that are unrealistic or are basically unrealistic and are trumped up by various, and you're manipulated into believing various fears that are not even there, or if they are there, they're of minuscule importance. Anyway, so such is this effort right now in this video. I will return to this in future videos and try to put this together with, among other things, the Democratic Party normism that I was just talking about in the previous video. Anyway, so please share your thoughts in the comments below, and please like this video if you thought it was worthwhile, and please subscribe to Politics 2100 to get more content like this. And I hope to see you in the next video.